There we are. We are live on air, and I am with Stephen Hubbell, and I am in the Chicago region. Stephen is in sunny Southern California, which is the reason that I would like to spit on you, my friend. I do miss that region. That is a beautiful, beautiful area. So how are things out there?
It's getting nicer out. We're kind of in the mountain air, so it's cold once in a while, but it's steadily increasing in temperature, so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, right around the 4th of July, you will notice that it pretty much has thawed everything out there. And although up in those mountains, it's kind of cool because the Indian population, and there is a couple of different tribes who inhabited those mountains for centuries before the Anglos arrived. But they used to migrate with the seasons, and in Palm Springs, when it's 125 degrees in the summer, they would be up on top of the peaks, and there would actually still be snowpacks in some areas. So it is a region with a lot of diversity, but nonetheless it is desert, ultimately.
Yeah, we could just drive about 45 minutes to get to the desert, and then you drive an hour from here, you get to the ocean. So it's definitely a lot of diversity.
Yes, strategically placed. Well, Stephen, you are a Scorpio, and I am a Pisces, and the sun is currently transiting through good old Taurus. So it is in sextile to my sun and in opposition to your sun. Are you feeling that water-earth interaction? Have things become muddy, or are they clearing up for you?
A little bit of both. And I really enjoy this Taurus energy that's coming in. We're at about 9 degrees Taurus right now, so we're almost halfway. It's very stabilizing, but at the same time, Taurus is one of those signs that's one of the densest earth element. It's so thick, so at times it can sort of feel like there's just like a brick inside that's stabilizing, but also could be somewhat pressing if you're not used to it.
Yeah, it definitely is. It is a happy energy, but it is very, very much like the happiness one finds in a mud bath, and that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you just need to go find that spa where you can lay in a puddle of mud and let it all be extracted from you. So maybe this is what's going on right now. This is a cycle of extraction energy with the sun in Taurus for those of us who have a highlighted watery component in our charts.
Absolutely. I'm also feeling it as Taurus is represented as that earth element, and it's represented in the neck and the throat, that bullheadedness. So I'm sort of feeling that actually physically inside my body, and it feels as though it's sort of like holding my body in place, like I don't want to move as much. Sort of lazy and stubborn.
So that can actually be kind of fun because then you learn about your own limitations. Why am I being stubborn about this? Why have I not allowed myself to just go with the flow? See, and it really is affecting you significantly right now because, again, this is something I harp on a lot. But when we're looking at situations around where the sun's placement is, since the sun is in Taurus, and we know that today the moon is in early degrees of Aquarius, but very few astrologers talk about where the Earth is in that configuration. And the sun is always in the opposite sign of the Earth. So if the sun is in Taurus, then the earth is in Scorpio. So you are getting, you know, that real sink it into the ground, get your roots down, and look for nutrition that you absorb from Mother Earth.
Right. And the other aspect we have in Taurus right now is true Lilith. So for those who aren't familiar with Lilith, she's sort of the fluctuating feminine feature. What would you say about Lilith, Chris?
Well, you know, Lilith is the antistic side of the feminine energy. Venus and the moon are both yielding. They are both not subservient, but they are yielding to the union of the masculine and feminine. Lilith was the one that was not willing to yield in that first relationship she had with Adam, I believe it was. And so she created a schism there. And the presence of Lilith, as far as its astrological component, I don't really see it as being hugely significant, but I think that if it's touching off something that's very much a sensitive spot in your personal chart, it can set off fireworks for a few days, but I don't see it as being hugely impactful for the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm. I also noticed that as we're on this Scorpio-Taurus axis, that we're also looking at Mercury in Taurus, and Mercury is in retrograde. And a lot of us know about Mercury retrograde, but we might not think about the actual sign he's placed in. And Taurus, he's really going over that grounded communication, that like earthy communication. Like, do our words hold earth to them? Are they really practical? Are they really applicable? And in retrograde, I would say he's kind of urging us to go inward and ask ourselves, that is our communication really grounded in that way?
And all of the retrogrades cause us to look at the illusions in our life, because, you know, I imagine there are probably some people who are not studied enough who actually think that, you know, Mercury or Saturn or Mars or whatever is zipping through the heavens, and all of a sudden it throws on the brakes and goes backwards for a few days or a few months. The reality is that it's the illusion of backward motion because of the elliptic of the orbit. So we really have to factor that in. Whenever there's a retrograde, it is all about illusions that are created around that energy field and in that sign. So if we've got, like right now, Saturn is going backwards in Sagittarius, well, what are our illusions about our understanding of, you know, esoteric knowledge, of travel, of other cultures and other people? And we're seeing this come out in this political year. I mean, all of a sudden, a lot of misstatements are being made about foreign cultures, and those bubbles are coming up and being exploded. So that retrograde energy is our opportunity to penetrate illusion and come to a higher realization of what truth is.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. That other part of that Sagittarius Saturn retrograde is that we have Mars retrograde right next to it, about 8 degrees away from it. So what that's doing, in my interpretation, is that since Sagittarius is this freedom-seeking, truth-seeking kind of sign, these two planets in retrograde, Saturn being sort of the taskmaker and the hard work element, and Mars being the passionate element, is kind of directing us to inward to question those parts of ourselves. So it's a little bit wonky, it kind of seems like, because Sagittarius usually likes to push out and express out energy, but since we've got these two planets in retrograde in it, it's sort of taking that strong sword and pointing it inward to look at our own internal illusions. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, that fills out when you look across to the natural home of Mars, which is in Aries, and we've got Uranus, which is going direct in Aries, but it nonetheless is coloring the water, I guess you could say. So that Mars energy, that Saturn energy, simply by empathetic association with Uranus in Aries, because it's enshrined by sign, is creating this kind of a sudden epiphanal experience. You know, Uranus is the stalker hiding in the bushes. It jumps out at you, and you factor that into the activity of Saturn and Mars, and oh my goodness, we could have some amazing breakthroughs and realizations that not only affect us personally, but that we can share and perhaps leave an imprint on the collective consciousness in some way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I look at Saturn and Uranus. They're sort of these giant planets. There's two of the bigger planets in our solar system, and when they're both in fire signs, they're definitely going to get things moving for us.
They definitely are. The other thing that's kind of fun to at least take a nod at is we've got Neptune doing her exotic dance as she moves through Pisces. And Neptune is, you know, a lot of people associate it with drugs and that sort of thing, but it simply is the planet of making the illusion so intense that you finally, you know, give up your addiction to the physical realm and start to seek a higher plateau, start to swim to the surface in search of greater light and greater illumination. And right now we've got Jupiter doing a backward dance in earthy Virgo opposing Neptune. And I personally have been feeling this interaction since Neptune is conjunct my natal sun in Pisces. And so there are moments when I feel like, what was that, Gumby? The Gumby guy getting stretched and configured into new configurations and challenged on beliefs. And, you know, it is a fascinating transit going on there. How is it affecting you?
Well, as you know, I have a rising Pisces, so my ascendant is Pisces, and I've been noticing, you know, ever since Neptune went into Pisces, of course, that's intensified because of the more dreamy element of Neptune being in his home sign. But with Jupiter in Virgo and retrograding, I've also noticed I really want to get organized too. I'm like, whoa, what is this? This opposite flip side of the coin to my rising sign is sort of like this Virgo organization, this practicality, this detail-oriented nature. And so I've been using that to fuel me and sort of getting my business projects up and getting my stuff organized to put out there to people.
Yeah, it definitely can come through in a very practical and grounded way. And I think it's important that, you know, for people who are sharing this experience here that we're having on Google Hangouts with us, to emphasize the fact that these are not exterior forces that are shaping and forcing us to live a life that perhaps we don't really want to live. But astrology in itself is a way of recognizing the internal elements that are at motion within our consciousness. So basically, it's like a roadmap that we left for ourselves about the journey we're on. And if we learn how to read the roadmap, then that gives us greater clarity as to how to adapt, how to release, how to make the process of day-to-day life a lot more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo that too with, I was just talking to my friend this morning about the way that the planets are serving us. If we can look at these planets, yes, they provide these symbols for us to look internally, and they're serving us really to not remain at the level of astrology and remain at the level of this sort of ego realm we've set up, but to actually use it as a tool in order to ascend higher and to forgive what we've made here. It's sort of serving us to look at the things that we've made in a new light over and over, the different aspects and the way that they line up, cause us to look at what we've made in different ways. So we get all these new perspectives, and then we have an opportunity in every moment how we look at it, and if we want to see it differently.
And to be able to actually release our attraction / addiction to perpetuating this, because really at some point time will run out and we will awaken from the illusion, but we can perhaps accelerate the process by becoming more conscious and reading the roadmap of astrology or the roadmap of tarot cards or various other sources of divination that help us to get out of this tortured experience where everybody is trying to be one step ahead of everybody else, and we're all killing each other for no real reason.
Yeah, the one other part that I wanted to add to what's going on, if we could just look at the summation of the transits, we've got a lot of planets in the earth signs, and then we've got planets in the fire signs. So right now we're going through this hugely earth and fire kind of energy. It's sort of like this fire that's wanting to burn through, and then we're planted with both feet in the earth at the same time. So it's kind of an interesting energy, because the fire, a lot of times, like a child who's had too much sugar, kind of wants to just like run about and go kind of wild. But the earth is going, no, we got to stay grounded in this physical reality.
Absolutely. And you know what's on the horizon here is that Venus is at that 29th degree of Aries today, and it's going to flip over into Earth also. So we're really going to have a huge amount of earthiness as we continue to progress through the sign of Taurus. And then we've got, that take off all your clothes and run around the room naked and jump up and down and enjoy the other side of reality with Gemini as it begins to approach us here. So it's about 21 more days before that occurs, but that's something that we can keep our aspirations attached to.
Yeah, and would you also say, I noticed when I started studying astrology that as the sun moves through the signs, it goes cardinal, fixed, mutable. And so now we're in a fixed sign, which is Taurus. We were in Aries before, and the next one's going to be Gemini. So that's going to be that mutable release of all this pent-up energy for us as well. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's very airy. We all think of mutable as simply because of the nature of water. We tend to attach that idea there, or that word to water. But the truth is, mutable air is really a very dynamic and exciting kind of energy to step into also, because it gives us the force underneath our wings to elevate us, to get us into that higher position, to see perspectives that we don't normally enjoy by gaining that height of perhaps the eagle or the seagull, as Jonathan Livingston appeared to be, or the sparrow, or whatever. But it does get us into a much more lighthearted status of day-to-day existence.
Oh yeah, I especially would echo that with Gemini, because Gemini is that very sociable sign. social butterfly kind of sign, the communication that comes out with all of us. So things should be a little bit easier to express, I would think, or easier to communicate with more lightheartedness when that happens.
Yeah, that's very much the case. And you know, we're watching all these planets again continue to spread out more, so a lot less of the really harsh angular confrontational energies. So I would say spring into summer and summer into autumn are going to be just getting better and better and better.
Absolutely.
Well, Stephen, it was a delight chatting with you. I'm sure we'll be doing this again before too much longer with this next cycle of planetary activity. And I hope that people who do check this video out give us some feedback and let us know what you would like for us to talk about. So I will talk to you sometime in the near future.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for chatting.
Great.